Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Cycle. If you just watched our first video or listened to our previous episode, we talked about a bunch of fantasy baseball news, notes, some injuries, some potential breakouts, some burning questions. And in this video, we're going to talk about buy low, sell high trade candidates and some waiver targets. And I will be doing it today with not Ryan Wormley, but once again with Kelly Kirby, who is joining us this week. I was going to make a joke about Worm not being here. But it seems like the last time I did that, people took me seriously and they were actually offended and thought I was being serious. So I'll avoid doing that to not anger the YouTube commenters who thought I was because I think the last time Worm was still he was a week or two out from the same shoulder surgery that I had, and I was how about this guy not being here? And people were legitimately mad about me and thought I was being serious. So I won't do it, but I'm happy to be joined once again by Kelly Kirby for all three videos of the cycle this week. And Kelly, after that long intro from me, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty great because I don't roster Mike Trout anywhere, and he's now taking a small break on the IL. I know we may not make fun of Worm, but I can certainly make fun of you, so that works for me.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's worth mentioning at the top. If you watched the previous video, we recorded it on Thursday. We are now here on Friday, hence the outfit change for me. But we talked a lot about Mike Trout yesterday and speculated on his injury because he left the game on Wednesday and he did not play on Thursday, and now he's on the IL. And they originally said it was a precautionary move. Now he's on the IL, and they are still saying they're not concerned and that it's a bone bruise. But like we've said about players like Nick Pivetta and his, coming back down to earth, seen this show before, and I see how I know the ending. So fingers crossed for me, who has him all over the place. We won't have to rehash it again because if you go back and watch the previous video, we go through just so many shares of Mike Trout I have and how big of a dagger this is for my fantasy season. But I knew the risk going in, and here we are. But instead, today, let's talk about some buy low, sell high trade targets right off the bat. And let's start, Kelly, with your favorite buy low this week.
All right, my favorite buy low, which is I think it's when I was doing the research for the article, I was amazed at what his expected numbers were, and that people on our Discord channel are freaking out about Yordan Alvarez. Which I understand. I mean, when you draft someone like that, you're looking for kind of immediate results, I think. And he is certainly not providing those when he's sitting at a 219 average for a career 295 hitter. That's, that's pretty bad. So the panic, though, is what I kind of said was I'm willing to start to kick the tires on what someone who has him would expect for him. And I think there's just a lot to be made now in May to be able to get him and kind of wait for the turnaround, because I really truly believe it's coming. His batting average may not get back up to the 290s, but his slugging right now is 354 and expected is 502. So at some point he's going to just go on a run, and it may not be buy low, you can trade Pavin Smith for him, but I feel like maybe there's a struggling. I feel like there's a struggling, I mentioned Jose Altuve, who's not having a great season, who's, so if there's someone that you kind of sneak in there to get this first round guy, I would definitely aim for Alvarez right now.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I've seen him as a buy low candidate probably for the last week or two for a lot of the same reasons. I fully believe he's one of the better hitters in baseball. My only concern with him is the knees. Those aren't getting any better or any younger. As someone who's rostered him a bunch in the past, that's always going to be a concern. So that would be my only real worry, is if there's anything going on, below the waist there with his knees. Because it's, then you could be in the situation where he's not playing every day, or he has to do a stint on the IL and maybe it zaps some of his power. That would be my only concern. But just in terms of overall hitting, I'm not particularly concerned right now. It also feels not across the board, but there are a lot of really good hitters right now, just off to kind of slow starts. And I'm not really sure why, especially batting average wise, because there are even some players who are putting up some good power numbers, but the batting average isn't great. not exactly sure why, and I imagine that'll start to normalize and regress, positive regression for the YouTube commenters. I imagine that'll be the case. So I'm fully on board with Yordan Alvarez. Now for mine, we'll see if you're on board with this one. I have Luis Robert, and it's not for quite the same reasons, but he has been showing signs of life. I know you wrote up Yordan Alvarez in this week's Fantasy Pros players to trade now are buy low, sell high featured pros for the week. I wrote up Luis Robert, and I said in the article, I'm not gonna read the whole blurb, but to summarize basically what I said, his numbers are really bad right now. But over the last week when I wrote it, he was batting 273, 2 home runs, 4 stolen bases, still stealing a ton of bases. So even though that he's struggling across the board, you're still getting those speed numbers. And he's on the worst team on the planet. Except maybe the Rockies. I expected the White Sox to be the worst team we've ever seen. Might actually be the Rockies, but White Sox are certainly bottom 2, bottom 3. He's got you can see just from his walk rate, there's no protection in that lineup. He's walking more than he's like twice as often he's ever walked in his career. And I just think he's going to turn it around at some point. Maybe not to like the levels we've seen like a few years ago, kind of like we talked about in a previous video with Sandy Alcantara. Maybe we're not going to see that Luis Robert anymore. But I just think he's better than this, and I think he's going to get traded. And I think he's going to get traded sooner rather than later. And again, not to keep comparing him to Sandy Alcantara, I'm sure the White Sox would be happier if he was performing better right now because then he'd be easier to trade. But he's still going to get traded. And we already heard that the Dodgers were interested at one point just because the Dodgers are interested in everyone.
Yeah.
And, if he just, took over as a Dodgers outfielder, he would immediately be like the sexiest candidate on the waiver wire or like trade target. And I think something like that is happening sooner rather than later. And so I'm willing to like kind of buy low while his value is pretty low because like I said, like the power speed numbers are still kind of there. As soon as that batting average starts to creep up a little bit, he's not a buy low anymore. So I'm going to try and buy low now. I don't know. I know some people are really down on him. I don't know what your interest is as Luis Robert as a buy low.
Yeah, I have varying interest in him. I think I traded Clay Holmes straight up for him in one of my leagues. Mostly I just had an abundance of pitching and I, didn't hate myself enough. So I thought, okay, I'll just bring Robert in. But I feel like I think what we're all holding out for is for him to get traded and for that to kind of be a catalyst for him to like feel better and play better. Because I just imagine it's so like, whatever, what's the right word for that? Like he just has to feel when you play on the White Sox, you just kind of have to feel kind of crappy in and day out. Like if you're going to a job that you just like have no motivation for. So I'm hoping that he gets traded to someone like the Dodgers, or just like you said, anyone else, really, like any other team can grab him. Even if the Rockies grab him, at least then you get a little bit of Coors Field in your life. So yeah, I just don't go into it expecting the 2023 numbers. Like I don't think 38 homers is on the horizon by any stretch. But if he's running and gets the batting average back to even like the 250 range, I think he'd be worth targeting.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I think about that all the time. That's a good point about just like what it's got to be like psychologically to show up every day and play for a team like that. It's one thing if you're a younger up and coming player and you're still you have that like fresh feeling like I made it to the show. Look at me, I'm a major leaguer. You're a veteran like Luis Robert and you're just showing up to this ballpark, this team every day. It's got to be just like a really drain. And like that, I used to see it, or like, maybe it was just because I watched like a ton of Yankees games when I was like younger. But they used to always call it like when a player like put on the pinstripes, he would like just become a different player. And I saw it like it would infuriate me as a young kid who didn't like the Yankees.
Right.
They would just like acquire this like middling player and it was like, boom, he put on the pinstripes and he was an all-star. And sometimes it's just what you need. You just need to change the scenery of like some place with more energy. Now what I normally do with Worm is, I wrote a bunch of names down in the article of like players I would trade. I usually do like pitcher for hitter trades. I'm also looking at the article right now and realizing that instead of Christopher Sanchez, I wrote Christian for some reason. So I'll edit that as soon as we hang up, as soon as we stop recording. But that's the first name, Christopher Sanchez. Is that someone you'd be willing to, who would you rather have rest of season, Sanchez or Luis Robert?
Yeah, right now I'll take the hitter. I mean, I think with Sanchez has a couple of injury issues, right? Like that we're a little nervous about him. So yeah, I would
Everyone
take,
but the Phillies is nervous about that injury. Apparently they're not. But
yeah. So no, I would take Robert, and you know, I always like to kind of head off the argument that you know, these players are getting paid millions of dollars, and everyone would change spots with them, and my whole thing is I'm like, a job is still a job. This is still a thing that he has to do day in and day out, and like, not to be like existential about it, but it doesn't really matter sometimes how much you're getting paid when that is the you're just kind of slogging through as a veteran that would rather be on any other team. So yeah, it's I just, yeah, I would still take Robert, I think, and Sanchez, depending on that injury, would be the one I would want to get rid of.
Yeah. What about Brian Wu?
I like Woo, so, which is like one of my favorite things to say. I like Woo, but yeah, I think I would take. That is tricky. I'd still go Robert, just, you know, just to see if the upside comes back.
I'm glad that you talked long enough there for my air conditioning to stop making a noise, so I just muted. So thanks for talking for like at least 9 seconds. What about Sonny Gray?
Sonny Gray. I like Gray. I roster him all over, so I think I would actually rather take him.
Mackenzie Gore.
Oh, Gore is. Why are you asking such tough questions? I would take Gore if he's continuing to kind of strike out the world. I would take him over Robert.
And then the last one is Bailey Ober.
I don't trust Ober, but he's having a great year. I mean, that would totally depend on the team. So if I needed pitching, then yeah, I would take Ober. Just right now anyway, until he is doing better, or until he falls off the cliff, and then I would try to flip him. So
yeah, well, if those seem like good fits as a close value trade candidates, it's because I use the FantasyPros trade value chart. So that's why.
For sure.
Let's move over to your favorite sell high player for the week.
All right, so my favorite sell high player is Andy Pages, which I believe is how you pronounce it.
Yep.
Pages, yeah. I even had it written out phonetically. Yeah, I think that he is, what I wrote about him is that he is performing so like above where he's probably going to end up. So like, he's slashing 292, 370, 521. He's got the 6 home runs. He's got more RBIs than Ohtani at this point. And now is definitely the time to get out from underneath him. I think that, especially if they do go out and try to find, what if they go out and trade for Robert? I feel like Pages is the one that's going to suffer the most from that. And also, like, his expected batting average is 233. His expected slugging is like at 401. So the cliff is coming, and I think like right now you could flip him for a pitcher that that might give you a little bit more in the interim than what he's going to give you come like June, July, August. So.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because as I was talking about Luis Robert, I remembered that your sell high was Andy Pages. I was like, who could really be impacted by that trade I just mentioned is Andy Pages.
Yep.
So maybe he really is a sell high. I tried to sell him high, not sell high. I tried to trade him in the offseason in a dynasty league, and I couldn't find a deal. So I should probably revisit that now that he's off to such a good start and try to flip him for a pitcher. The one name that you mentioned in the article that I thought was interesting is Bichette, who's having like a really weird year to start, like no power, but like hitting fine, like batting right around 300, but like 0 home runs.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, like, especially because it doesn't seem like he's got 3 stolen bases, but it doesn't seem like he's going to run as much. Like 2021, he stole 25 bases. I don't think we're going to see that ever again from him.
Right.
And it's just like, if you're not getting stolen bases and like the power is kind of middling, like what are we doing here for Bichette? It's kind of why I was not that into him coming into the year, although I could use the batting average right now.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I liked about him, like his expected slugging there is supposed to be 501, so there's a chance that power might actually show up at some point. But yeah, I don't know what's going on. I feel like Toronto has had a power outage to start the season, and maybe it will have some positive regression, as you may say, like from here on out. So I thought he was a decent. I mean, I would rather have him going forward and see what he comes back with. So
the Blue Jays should just go back to Dunedin, and
yes,
they should. Everyone else is playing in minor league ballparks now. Why not just go right back and find your power stroke?
Yeah, exactly.
My favorite sell high is Nathan Eovaldi, who is pitching well and is someone that you can just kind of like in past several years. I think we even talked about it in the offseason. He's just like a workhorse. I mean, you can just kind of like, he's really solid, like high floor pitcher. And he's off to a really good start, which is another reason to sell high. But what I wrote in the article for this week is that while the overall numbers look pretty solid, there's some red flags when you look under the hood that are pretty concerning for me. The biggest one is his fastball velocity is down to about 93.5 miles an hour, 93.6 miles per hour. It's normally 2 miles an hour higher than that. So he's down a full 2 miles an hour. And it seems like he's well aware of that because he threw his four-seamer 37.4% of the time last season, more than any other pitch. And he's actually leading with his splitter this year. He's almost kind of pitching backwards where he's like using his splitter even more. So that tells me, and maybe I'm looking too much into it, but I don't think I am. That tells me that his velocity is down and he knows it. It's not like an unconscious thing that he's doing. He's like, I have to pitch differently because I don't have my fastball right now. Right. And his four-seamer is down to 28.5%. So he's still throwing it, but like 10% less than he did last year. And while his four-seamer has just a 229 batting average against, the expected batting average against is 379. So there's some damage coming there, if you see the regression. And if you look across the board at his expected numbers, you see a similar story. It's 183 batting average versus 260 expected. 282 slugging versus 456 expected. 227 WOBA, which is my favorite kind of indicator of like quality of contact, versus 328 xWOBA, and then 221 ERA versus 408 xERA. His other expected like ERA numbers like FIP, xFIP, Sierra seem like fine, but xERA seems to be the one that's like, hold on a second, like red flag here. And I feel like I'm seeing what the xERA is seeing. That like there's something weird going on with this fastball, and he's off to a really strong start. Some of the expected numbers are like, look, there's some dark clouds ahead. And so while he's out here pitching like an ace, I would like to trade him, see what I can get for him. So I'll get your initial thoughts there, and then we can talk about some of the potential targets I threw in the sheet or in the article.
Yeah, I've wondered that about Eovaldi. He's another one that I don't have anywhere, mostly because he's 35, so I kind of stayed away from him in drafts. And I also I feel like a lot of years he kind of does this where it's like he starts off really strong or he has this run and then things adjust. But the pitch mix that you were describing, I agree with you. It's like he's kind of trying to figure something out, and right now the hitters haven't caught up to it yet, and he's getting a little lucky. So yeah, I mean, he's another just like some people are very, very desperate for pitching based on injury and other things, so find them and go for it.
Yeah, I think with how well he's pitching right now, and because a lot of people need pitching, I think you can get a decent return. And now that I'll toss the names to you, but I almost think you might be able to do better than some of these names that I put in the sheet. Now that I think about it, especially because the first name I put in the sheet was Trevor Story, but Trevor Story after a really hot start is ice cold right now, so it might not even be someone I would want to target. So would you rather have Eovaldi or Trevor Story, or maybe just you want to trade them both away?
Yeah, in that case, I would keep Eovaldi, I think, until one of the wheels came off, and then I would start trying to move him. I don't know what happened to Story. He looked great, and then he looks like, the Trevor Story that has been around for the last couple of years.
Yeah, when he is around.
Right, very rarely.
What about Luis Arias?
You and I made a trade for Arias in one of our leagues because, again, desperate for pitching. But so in that case, it's kind of I could probably make that swap without any question. If I had Eovaldi and I needed like a first base, second base eligible guy, when he comes back, is he back yet? I don't remember.
Yeah, he's back.
Is he back? Okay. So yep. So I think that's a swap I could make again because of his eligibility, and he's just not going to hurt you. I don't know what this power surge he had was, but I don't feel like that's going to last. So I would still take him before the wheels come off on the pitching.
Yeah, I think we traded. I sent you Drew Rasmussen for Arias, right? Yeah.
Yes, because
I felt like a fair.
Yeah, my entire pitching staff was injured. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and my hitting, I talked about this, with Worm in previous weeks. Like my hitting in that league that we're in together, Worm's in it too. My hitting could not, almost like you would have to like do it on purpose to like have hitting. And like I look at the roster, I'm like, this roster was fine. Like why? Like I have Gunnar Henderson, I have Mookie Betts. Like why is my hitting so bad? Because you look at like the Roto category, like how many like points I have like 13 points. Just like the minimum you can have is 10 and I have 13. Right. I'm like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, I think you and I are sitting right next to each other on that. So it's my pitching is I think at 13 too. It's just stupid.
What about Zach Neto?
Yeah, I like Neto a lot. So that would actually be probably the easiest of the bunch that you said. I would take him without thinking about it.
What about Brandon Nimmo? Might be selling a little low on that.
Yeah, I think you could probably get somebody a little bit better if the person needing pitching is desperate, like I am in that league.
And I thought this one was interesting. The trade value chart wasn't exactly lining up, but I thought it could be. It was intriguing. What about Chandler Simpson?
That is intriguing. I feel like that kind of runs into that whole, okay, this guy just came up and he looks, great, and everyone is kind of all over it. So to me, he seems more like the guy you flip for a more proven kind of veteran. So I would probably hold Eovaldi in that case.
Yeah, let me see if I can find a name. What about Spencer Torkelson?
I really like Torkelson. Everyone keeps talking about that they think he's not gonna keep this up, but I would take him. I would take him for Eovaldi. Yeah.
Oh, how about this? Here's an interesting one for you. How about your boy Pete Crow Armstrong?
Well, I mean, no one's going to take away Pete Crow Armstrong from me. But yeah, I mean, I would trade Eovaldi for him. That's who I would definitely rather have. Sorry, you lost me when you talked about my son. So.
All right, let's jump over to waivers for our waivers central segment here. And in this segment, we'll each talk about some of our favorite hitters and our favorite pitchers to target this week, and then we'll also kind of like rapid fire hit on some deep league targets. So let's start off with your favorite hitter waiver wire target of the week.
So my favorite waiver target for this week is Kyle Stowers from Miami, who I think you can never have enough Marlins, but if you look at his Statcast page, it's actually really impressive. His slugging numbers, he's kind of doing like the expected is just reflecting in what he's actually at. So he has 4 home runs. He's stolen a couple of bases. It's not going to be a super productive lineup, but in terms of if you need someone for an outfield position, I think you can do a lot worse, and he's available in I think he's only 9% rostered in Yahoo. So for me, he seems like the kind that you just bring up, and he can be your 5th outfielder. So especially in 5 outfielder leagues, I know I have at least 3 outfielders I could punt for a guy that's doing what he's doing.
Yeah, and it seems like he is actually playing against lefties, which is interesting. He didn't play against a lefty in the most recent lefty, which was shockingly like a week ago. The Marlins just don't play lefties apparently, but he did start the previous 2 games against lefties, and wasn't even buried in the lineup. He was 5th and 6th in the lineup against them. 323 average. I don't think that's going to be sticking around.
No, but his expected is 295. So
yeah, it's not bad though.
Yeah.
Swinging strike rate is the same exact 18.1% that we saw last year. Walking over 10% of the time, would you like to see? Batting in the middle of that lineup, not exactly a deep lineup, not a great home ballpark to hit in. But yeah, I know we talk about it over the last few weeks, but we're at the point of the season and where the waiver wire is kind of barren. we're not getting a lot of like very fun call ups, at least not a high volume of them. Like we got Nick Kurtz, we got Chandler Simpson, we got some other guys, but it's not like we're seeing a ton of names every week where it's like, okay, like this is the name of the week that like we're all going to be focusing on. Like we're digging deep, like I said, because a lot of like I mentioned earlier, it seems like a lot of established hitters are also kind of like struggling right now, and so you need certain things. I know in a lot of leagues, even where my offense is doing fine, my batting average is not what I would like it to be. And so if you have a guy batting 323 with a 295 expected average, even if I only get a couple weeks out of him, if I can get a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks of a decent average, like I could use that on a lot of my teams. So
right, for sure.
Yeah, he's probably more of a deeper league target. Like I'm not going to add him in like my 10 team head to head league, or 10 team head to head league. And he's not going to be rostered there, but in 12 team 5 outfielder roto, I could see taking a shot on him. And let's see what you think about my name. I wrote a bonus name in there, Andy Pajes. We don't have to talk about him because we already mentioned him as a sell high. But even though he's a sell high, I think he can also be a waiver wire target, with the understanding that it's probably going to be a short-term thing. It's, a lot of times with waivers, we're talking week to week. We're not talking about here's a guy you need to pick up for the rest of the season. I think Andy Pajes is like, if you need short-term production, you might get it. So give it a shot. But the name I do want to talk about is Yordan Beck, who is kind of sexy. He kind of has some exciting things going on.
Yes.
And he's gotten a chance. We don't always exactly trust what the Rockies are going to do, but he's got some things to like. He's batting really high in that lineup. He's got some power. He's got some speed. Through 21 games, he's batting 267 with 5 home runs, 4 stolen bases, striking out a ton, which is not ideal, but also walking at a very good rate. So if you're in an OBP league or points league, he is walking a bunch, which is helpful, especially as a guy who can steal some bases. And again, like he's 24 years old. He's kind of been like up and down the last couple of years. As has been the case with a lot of hitters in the last few years. When he first came up, he struggled. But now he's back up and he's playing better. And maybe he sticks around this time. And if you can give me someone who is, if you look at Yahoo, 26%, ESPN 9%, because ESPNs are shallow leagues, CBS 44%, so almost half of leagues. And sometimes you can kind of look at like roster percentages. CBS is typically going to be on the higher end because they're kind of like, they have fewer casual leagues, just because of the nature of the format and the site itself. And so if you can see kind of a significant jump at CBS, you might be looking at someone who, those leagues are more into, or they're just earlier on than some of these other leagues. So if you see a big difference like that, that can be a good sign. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Yordan Beck?
I actually have been paying way closer attention to Yordan Beck than I had planned to, because I drafted him in my Tout Wars league, and when he got sent down early in the season, like I almost dropped him. It was real close. And then I thought, well, I mean, you got to hold on to all the Rockies you can handle. So, but mostly I had somebody else, like I'd picked up like Miguel Rojas or something to cover. So I was like, I'll just get rid of him. But, yeah, no, he's been super productive. He's been someone that I like, especially in that league, because that's against people that know more than I do on any given day, but also just that he is offering production in the roto categories. So it's again in that 5 outfielder league. There's just so many other players that I think aren't worth the chance that you could give back that he is currently producing at. So yeah, I like him, and I would definitely pick him up.
Yeah, that's a good point. He's a high ceiling guy. Like we don't know what he's like, potentially high ceiling, low floor. Like his ceiling is like really, really good, but his floor is he's in the minors. So there's a pretty big wide range of outcomes there. His StatCast page is pretty interesting. A lot of red at the top. Really good xWOBA, xSlug, xVelocity is really good. Barrel percentage 94th percentile. Hard hit percentage is good. Sweet spot 98th percentile. Bat speed really good. But then towards the bottom, squared up percent 8%, 8th percentile. Chase percent 34th percentile. Whiff 1st percentile. Not great. So that's where those 33% strikeouts come from.
Yeah.
K percent 3rd percentile. So like it seemed that reads like someone who, when he hits it, but he also misses a lot. That's kind of what that profile means. When you see a lot of red at the top, and then the really low dark blue at the bottom, that's someone who's getting his money's worth every time he swings, which can be good and bad. But that's, it's kind of like a, volatile profile, but it's also the profile that we've seen from a lot of young, like hitters with power, kind of like before they develop into something else. Sometimes they don't, and this is just who they are, but sometimes it's kind of like a really, really young, like, I don't even want to say this comparison, but I've already started a sentence and I can't not say it now. I feel like Michael Scott, like sometimes I just start a sentence and I don't know where it's going, and I hope I find it along the way. But I was going to say that's kind of a profile that we saw of like a really, really young Aaron Judge. Not comparing the two even a little bit, because like I said, once I had the thought, I didn't even want to finish the sentence. But that's kind of like what you see from like a young hitter with power. They're just swinging out of their shoes, but they also miss a lot. Also like Austin Riley had a similar profile when he was like really young. Both, I don't think he's going to be anywhere near as good as those two players anytime soon. But just saying, like, sometimes when you see that development, like, this is what it looks like. But like maybe not. But also I think it's worth taking the shot because he's a high ceiling. And I'd rather take a shot on someone like him than someone like, even like an Andy Paz that I mentioned. Like Andy Paz is doing it right now, producing right now. I don't know that it's going to continue. Whereas like Jordan Beck, maybe it will. But that's enough about that. Enough about comparing Jordan Beck to Aaron Judge. Don't clip that. But
I was gonna say, like, I hope that the title of this pod is the one where Maher compared.
Yeah, make the thumbnail. Is Jordan Beck Aaron Judge?
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. People would click on that.
That'll get some clicks. Yeah. Let's jump over to your favorite pitcher.
My favorite pitcher. So I am really enjoying rostering Griffin Canning. And I was shocked that he was like only rostered in like 37% of leagues. It's not that like I love him, but he has been pretty productive for the Mets, who have a great team. They're winning a lot, so he's got the win equity. His WHIP is way higher than what I would want it to be, but I feel like he offers good strikeouts. I feel like he offers an ERA that right now is at 2.61. It says his xERA is going to jump to like 3.9, but I'm just hoping that in this case the stats are wrong. But no, in general, I was surprised that he was as available as he is, and I also have no problem if he needs to be like a streamer. Like I'm going to put him up against the Marlins and the Rockies and like sit him during the Yankees Dodgers. So I'm good with either way. But yeah, he's my favorite guy this week.
I've wanted Griffin Canning to be good for so long. I feel like I rostered him in a bunch of dynasty leagues, and I just always kind of liked his profile. And I was like, I feel like this guy can be good, and then he just kind of wasn't. We've seen flashes in the past where I was like, I feel like even like several years ago, I would play like MLB The Show. I would always trade for Griffin Canning. It's always a pitcher I wanted. When you mentioned like the xERA, I always. I have like my customized like FanGraphs dashboard that I like to look at for these players. I always have like ERA, FIP, xFIP, SIERA, and xERA like lined up next to each other. I usually just pick the one that is closest to like the narrative I'm trying to spin. Is like exactly. That's the one I want to go with.
For sure.
So his xERA is 3.92. FIP is only 3.25, and that's not too bad. So
that's fantastic.
Whichever one is the closest to where I'm trying to convince myself, that's the one you want to go with.
For sure.
It's really funny, like really early in the season when it's like this guy's ERA is 3 and his SIERA is like 97.
Yes. We call that the Robbie Ray, I think, right?
Yeah. But all of his ERA is 2.61. FIP, xFIP, SIERA, and xERA are all between 3.25 and 3.92. xFIP is 3.56. SIERA is 3.91. So they're kind of all in the within a half a run of each other.
Yep.
But yeah, I think the Mets are doing some things, and sometimes that's all it really needs is you need that kind of like electricity and that energy around you to get like the best version of yourself. We talked about it with Luis Robert showing up to that White Sox ballpark every day. Griffin Canning's been with the Angels for several years, and like that can't be fun a lot of times. And
No.
so,
Yep.
The Mets have a lot of energy right now. Sometimes that's kind of like what it takes. It's these players aren't robots. There's an emotional aspect to it. So we'll see kind of like how long this lasts. WHIP not great, about 1.4. I'd like to see something better than that. But yeah, it's a short term solution to a long term problem. And so if you need pitching, maybe play matchups and see what he's looking at. Do we know who he's pitching against this week? Let's see.
I looked it up and now I don't remember because that was yesterday. So
he's going up against your Cubs.
Oh yeah, I should have remembered that. But I mean, the Cubs are only scoring the most runs in baseball at the current time, so I'm sure it'll go well. But
yeah, it is at home though. It's in the Mets. It's not in Chicago.
Yeah.
So my favorite pitcher, waiver wire target, is Tony Gonsolin. Someone that I actually picked up last week on waivers while he was still on the IL, projected to start this week. That first start, as we mentioned in our previous video, went very well. But he's still available in a ton of leagues. Both 32% Yahoo, ESPN 12%, CBS 44%. And there's a good chance that in your league, especially if it's weekly lineups, he was not picked up this past Sunday heading into the week. And he's going to be, the only problem is he's going to be probably an attractive target this week. So if you're in a fab league, you're probably going to have to spend a decent amount of money. Maybe not a ton, but he pitched, his first start went so well, and he pitches for the Dodgers that he's going to be more expensive than he would otherwise be. So I'm very happy that I got a couple shares of him last week, kind of trying to get out ahead of it where I really needed pitching. Sometimes it pays to stream pitching as much as I do because you're early on guys because you need to be.
Right.
But we already kind of talked about it in a previous video, but we can circle back to it. But we don't have to spend a ton of time on Tony Gonsolin. But what's your level of interest on adding him this week as a potential waiver wire target?
Yeah, I'm interested in him. I think I would try in some of the leagues where I don't roster him anywhere, but the leagues where he's still available. I'm not going to throw a ton of fab money on it. So I think it's still important to kind of bid based on what you think he will be worth to you, not what other people are going to bid. That's where he falls, where it's I'm not going to overpay for him to make sure I get him, but if I can get him at the price I want, then that's great, and I'd be happy to add him. Mostly for what you said, where it's during preseason we were just get yourself some Dodgers. A hitting strategy is to just pick up people who are in the Dodgers lineup, but now it's starting to kind of sort out a little bit, and obviously his rotation spot is pretty set because they just keep losing people. So as long as he's healthy, he's going to take the ball. So yeah, so I like him, but only at the price that I'm willing to pay. Yeah,
we always pick on the Dodgers for having so many players, and they're they have 15 pitchers, but they use all 15. They
yes,
always have to. I also I mentioned he would probably be available in a lot of leagues. If you play on NFBC, I know I tried to add him last week and he was not in the system, which is a frustrating quirk that NFBC sometimes has. I don't know I know they do it all the time with prospects. A prospect has to debut and play before he's available. But I tried to add him on Sunday and he was not there. And he is there now that I'm looking. So I think it's just because he's been hurt and he wasn't in the free agent pool, and then he debuted and now he is. But he's, especially those are deeper leagues, 15 teams. He's gonna go for 25% of your fab probably this week.
Yeah.
I think in a regular league you can probably get away with 10% of your fab.
Right. Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, I was gonna say 8 to 10%. But
yeah, I think 10% would get it done if you want them. But in NFBC, it's going to be 25%, in some leagues. So that's going to be tough. All right, let's close it out with some deep league targets, and I'll just kind of run through them. If you play in deeper leagues, the waivers are even grosser than what we were just talking about. And so you have to, look in the mirror and take your medicine sometimes. And so some deep league targets: Eddie Rosario. Now that Jared Kelenic is sent down and Eddie Rosario is back with the Braves, they're getting the gang back together. He's someone who could give you some production. He's played well when he's played for them. Dalton Varsho is back with the Blue Jays, making very fun catches in center field. Did you see that highlight?
Oh yeah, that was incredible. It was really weird, but it was incredible. So
yeah, Jarren Duran didn't look thrilled when
no,
he was rounding second. He was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
For anyone who didn't see it, look up the Dalton Varsho catch. He's he's in center field. He's a really good center fielder, which is kind of interesting because he was a catcher and now he's one of the best outfielders in the league.
Yep.
but he's like running straight back in center field. It looks like he kind of trips going onto the warning track and kind of like falls down and then just like reaches up behind his back with his glove and catches the ball like while on a knee. It was just like shrugged and he was like, yep. That was easy.
There it is.
But really, probably, it's going to be like one of the catches of the year at the end of the year when they start putting those highlights together.
For sure.
Tyler Anderson, someone you and I talked about before the show, still widely available, and I don't really understand why. Like, he's not like the biggest name out there, but he's just been like quietly productive and has been for like 2 years, or like a year and a half, like dating back to, because he was like solid last year too. So if you need stream pitching, he's still available everywhere. Steven Matz, he's back, and he's pitching. He's a major league pitcher, pitching for a major league baseball team. So he's a guy, he's a guy you can stream. An interesting name, Ben Kasparius. We talked about all those Dodgers pitchers. He's pitching for the Dodgers. He's pitched really well in relief. I think he had like a really rough like first or second, he had like a really rough like early outing that like ballooned his ERA, and he's been like untouchable since then. But they are stretching him out as a starter. I'm not sure. I probably should have pulled up the stats. He only went like 3 innings in his first kind of like stretch out appearance. But they do want him to stretch out as a starter, and he's projected to be, or he was projected to be, a 2-star pitcher. It doesn't look like he's going to be anymore. But that one start should come against the Marlins in Miami. That's not a bad start to stream. It looked, and that might actually be better because it looked like his when he was going to be a 2-star pitcher before they kind of stretched things out a little bit, it was going to be at Miami and then at the Diamondbacks. If I'm going to stream him, I'd almost just prefer that 1 start. Like, give me just the Marlins. I don't need the Diamondbacks start in there.
For sure.
And then another name I wanted to include there is Josh Smith, who's currently starting for the Rangers because Corey Seager is out. Corey Seager is supposed to be back this weekend, but also Jake Berger was sent down to the minor leagues because he just can't hit right now. And Josh Smith, again, like not the sexiest name, but if you're in a deep league, he's doing fine. And, he's someone you can just have on your roster who's a warm body for a little while. He's been hitting fairly high in that lineup against righties. I think that's pretty much it. Anyone else? Any thoughts on those guys before we wrap it up?
Yeah, the Kasparius is an interesting one because I play in a save holds league and I picked him up and then kind of forgot about him a little bit until he had that blow up. I think it was against the Cubs. He just had a terrible outing and then I was like, oh, I have him somewhere. And then he had a great next outing, and now I'm like, oh, I guess I have a Dodgers starter. So yeah, I mean, I like the look of him. It'll be interesting to see if he can stretch out and keep the numbers he's got. But the only other one, is beware of Dalton Varsho. I feel like when I was writing his profile in the offseason, I was just like, can anyone bat this badly and keep their job? Like his numbers last year were so awful. So just, you want the home runs he's going to give you, but he will tank your batting average into oblivion. So just be careful with him.
Yeah, he's interesting because he was one of those players who we always get excited when a player is. We talked about it earlier this year with Wilson Contreras. When a guy is catcher eligible and is going to play every day somewhere else, you're like, this is the guy I need to have. Because if you can get everyday production, he's no longer catcher eligible. He doesn't catch anymore. But even then, it was like the season could have gone a little bit better. Could have gone worse. But it's almost like since he's stopped catching, his offensive numbers have gotten worse. Last year, 136 games, 18 home runs, but he batted 214 with 10 stolen, but also 10 stolen bases. Yeah, not a great profile. He's batting 300 right now, 3 games.
Yeah. 300. That's a large sample size, right? Stat people. No, I think that again, it's deep. If this is a deep league pickup, then he'll give you some production. I always just warn that the batting average is not going to stay there. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Also, 2 home runs already. Although one of them we talked about in the previous video was an 0-2 changeup from Lucas Giolito, which is right down the middle of the plate, and he just put it into the second deck in right field. Right. But at least he hit it. A lot of people missed that changeup.
For sure.
All right. That is all we have for this segment. Make sure to catch us on our next video and our previous video. We talked about Mike Trout, Sandy Alcantara, a bunch of early breakouts and whether they are real or not real, and some burning questions. And our next video, we're going to talk pitchers, streaming pitchers, 2-star pitchers that you need for your league. And so for Kelly Kirby, I am Mike Maher. This has been The Cycle, and thank you for stopping by.